Hello, welcome back to my channel. Well, another day, another political scandal, another federal government minister in trouble. So, Alan Tudge, Education Minister, has had to stand aside amid abuse allegations, the Prime Minister has told Parliament today. So, the Prime Minister has told Parliament that Education Minister Alan Tudge has stood aside from the ministry after a former Liberal staffer made fresh claims against him, allegedly she was in an emotionally and on occasion physically abusive relationship with him. Rochelle Miller and Mr. Tudge had a consensual affair in 2017. He's denied the allegation, saying he completely, utterly, and rejects Miss Miller's version of events, and that he regretted the affair. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said he asked Mr. Tudge to stand aside while the allegations are investigated by an independent review run by the Prime Minister's department. He said he wanted to ensure that the matters that have been raised can be properly assessed. I wish to stress that this action in no way seeks to draw a conclusion on those matters, he said, but this is the appropriate action for me to take under the ministerial standards. The Prime Minister described Miss Miller's allegations as obviously deeply concerning and I know deeply distressing for Miss Miller, Minister Tudge, and the families affected by these events. Mr. Morrison said Mr. Tudge welcomed the process and was looking forward to participating in the review. I've also asked for this advice to be provided directly to Miss Miller and my Chief of Staff. Miss Miller alleged in 2017 she drank heavily with Mr. Tudge and he became angry when she answered the phone call in the early morning from his hotel room bed. It was about 4 a.m, and a morning media producer was calling about a front page story we'd lined up. I started to talk to her to arrange a time, but I was half asleep, she said, reading a statement in Parliament House earlier today. Then I felt someone kicking me on the side of my hip and leg. As I tried to sit up in bed, it was the minister. He was furious, telling me to get out of his bed. He continued to kick me until I fell off the side of the bed and ended up on the floor. I searched around in the dark for my clothes while he was yelling at me that my phone had woken him up. He told me to get the F out of his room and make sure no one saw me. Last year, Miss Miller made a formal complaint about her time working in Mr. Tudge's office. However, it did not include an allegation of physical abuse. The Department of Finance completed a review into that complaint, and Minister Jane Hume said Ms. Miller had not participated in it. There were an independent review that was done into those allegations. Senator Hume said on Thursday, if she, Ms. Miller, had felt supported to participate in that review, maybe there would have been a different outcome, but the review found the allegations were unsubstantiated. Of course, we know that there's just been a review into the treatment of women in politics, and that's because of the Brittany Higgins. She came forward with an R allegation. Today, Ms. Miller called on the government to immediately commit to the 28 recommendations made in a major review that found widespread bullying and sexual harassment in Parliament House. This is not revenge, she said, it's never have been. I sometimes feel sorry for him, Mr. Tudge. It's about ensuring no one else ever goes through this workplace ever again. It's about changing the system that enabled this to happen. We shouldn't have to fight. Both the government and the Labor have committed to look at the recommendations from the review. Some include specific timeframes, while others are complex measures that will take time to introduce. In 2018, then Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull introduced the so-called bonk ban, so that ministers could no longer have sexual relationships with their staffers. The move came after it was revealed that Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce had an affair with his former media advisor, who he now has 2 children with. Labor has also banned MPs and their staff from having relationships. Yes, Australia has the bonk ban. So this has all come about. So that was in 2018. So this affair happened in 2017 before the bonk ban. There was Barnaby Joyce, wasn't there Alan Tudge, and wasn't it Christian Porter? Wasn't there the 3 alleged at the time? Anyway, so this is the Prime Minister talking here.
I was unindulgent to refer to the statement made earlier today by Ms. Miller and the allegations regarding her relationship with Minister Tudge. Mr. Speaker, these issues are obviously deeply concerning and I know deeply distressing, both for Ms. Miller, for Mr. Tudge, Mr. Speaker, and the families who are affected by these issues. I have discussed Miller's statement with Minister Tudge, who has refuted the claims that have been made, Mr. Speaker. Given the seriousness of these claims that have been made by Ms Miller, it is important that these matters be resolved fairly and expeditiously. To this end, the Minister has agreed to my request to stand aside while these issues are addressed by my department through an independent and fair process to ensure that the matters that have been raised can be properly assessed and the views put by the respective parties in relation to these issues. I'm advised by the department that they will be seeking to do this through Ms Vivian Tom. Mr Speaker, this will enable then my department to provide me with any further advice regarding any implications for the ministerial standard. But I
we know what the recommendations for the ministerial standards are.
wish to stress that this action in no way seeks to draw a conclusion on these matters, Mr Speaker, but this is the appropriate action for me to take under the ministerial standards. I note that Minister Tudge has welcomed this process, Mr Speaker, and he looks forward to participating in this process. I've also asked, as is occurring now, Mr Speaker, at the same time, for this advice to be provided directly to Ms Miller by my Chief of Staff. In the interim, Minister Robert will act as Minister for Education.
Oh, no.
I also note, Mr Speaker, that today the Minister for Employment, Workforce Skills and Small Business and Family Business will answer questions in relation to those portfolios.
Oh. I don't know what's worse. Anyway, that was what was stated in Parliament today. So I'm interested to hear what you think. We seem to have a problem in our federal Parliament at the moment. These ministers are getting themselves into trouble. However, they've been able to get away with it. And I think what's happening is that more and more victims are actually, or people are now starting to speak out. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? I'm interested to hear what you think. So tell me what you think in the comments below. So as I said, another day, another problem for ScoMo, another federal minister in trouble, having to face some allegations. I've lost count how many ministers that is, if someone's keeping count. Maybe we need to keep a tally. But wow, hey? Another one bites the dust. Ba-da-da-da-da. Another one bites the dust. I'm sure there were three Liberal ministers at one time that were having affairs, but anyway, I think he was one of them. But anyway, as I said, tell me what you think in the comments below, and I'll be interested to hear what you've got to say. Thank you. I'll catch you later.